Okay. Morning. Holding by
Good
the
morning.
Mish. Good morning. We're holding by the Mishnah and Kuf Beis and Beis. Yeah, Imar Alai, right? On 102, middle of the page. 102 B. So I think Hashem, if we're able to learn Torah every day, it's supposed to learning we should have the Beis of Mikdash. Mishnah says, Imar Alai b'machavas. Person accepts on himself to bring a mincha in a flat pan. Eiv marcheshas. But instead, when it comes to bringing him the mincha, he brings it in a deep pan. Or the opposite. Marcheshas, he accepts on himself to bring in a deep pan. Behavi b'machavas, and brings it in a flat pan. The Mishnah explains, the Mishnah says, Mashahevi hevi, what he brought is kosher. There's nothing wrong with what he brought. That was a kosher mincha. However, he took a pledge, and he didn't fulfill his pledge. Because he pledged something else. He brought this. So, okay. If let's say he says he says this pan over here, or this flour maybe, he says this I'm going to bring in a flat pan. And instead, he didn't follow through. He brought it in a deep pan. Or the opposite. He says this one, this flour, I'm going to bring in a deep pan. And he brings it in a flat pan. Then it's already a reza psula. Then it's already invalid. Because he was talking specifically about this, he didn't actually do what he said. Other one was he accepted on himself, so he still has that obligation lingering. He brought something else, but that obligation is still there. So what he brought was fine, but here the actual pledge that he made on this he didn't fulfill. This actual pledge was he actually lied about it. Says, I'm accepting on myself to bring two isarin, and I'll bring it in one vessel. The heavy b'shnei kelim, but he brought it in two vessels. Or he says, I'm going to bring it in two vessels. The heavy b'kleyach, he brings it all mixed in one. So masha heavy, but he brought. So the pledge he never fulfilled because he pledged something else. What he brought wasn't this pledge, so what he brought is good, but he didn't fulfill his pledge. Elu b'kleyachad, heavy b'shnei kelim. Let's say like the case where he said zu. Right? This I will bring. Instead of this, he said these. Elu is these. These I'll bring in one vessel, and he brings in two vessels. Or b'shnei kelim, then it's a real psulim. Exactly like we said before that he lied. It wasn't what he said he was going to do. Let's see, accepts on himself to bring two isaran in one vessel. And he brings it in two vessels. Amrullah, they said to him, you pledged one. If he continues through, he doesn't change his mind. So then he doesn't not change his mind. He doesn't change the way he's bringing it. Then it's going to be puzzle.
He designated a specific animal, or was like no room for everything? Kind of like
Sure. So over here, because they corrected him and he still does it, then so then it's going to be puzzle. Now he said hooray a lie. What's the difference if they corrected him? Maybe he's the one that he's going to bring in one keli. Rashi says the hashta leka l'meimer l'shem nadav acheres ma'aseh. You can't say that he's bringing it for another pledge that he has because they told him and he didn't respond that I'm bringing this for another pledge. He didn't say that. So it goes under the category of the harezu. Amrulai, I'm sorry, what happens over here? Okay. So, but let's say he actually switches then it's going to be ksherim. Then it's going to be kosher. After they correct him, he switches, then it's going to be kosher. Let's say he says, I'm going to bring two Yisarin in two Kalim. Maybe B'kliyachad, he brings it in one. You said you're going to bring it in two. So, Hikrivan, B'shnei Kalim, if he switches, then ksherim. Nastan L'kliyachad, he then goes back and puts them into two different ones, and he puts then goes back and he puts into 1-1. I'm sorry. He was supposed to. He pledged on him. He said that he's going to bring it in two kalim, but instead he brought it in one. Now he separates it. But if they mix together into one, then that would have the halacha of the regular halacha of when two minchas get mixed, that if you're still able to do the scoop from each one because it didn't mix together in such a way where it's you can't separate them, mix together in one pot, but you can still tell the difference. This is on this side, this is on that side. You can still do the scoop. Then it's going to be kosher. Okay. The Mishnah is a little repetitious. It talks about the if you change the type of container, and it says if you changed how big the container is. So tzricha, it's necessary to tell me that you're not going to be yaitza if you say harezu in these two instances, when it's you change the container or when you change the how many. So it's necessary to say both of those cases. The Yashmin and Hachkamaisif would only say the first one, which is when you change which type of pan it is. It's because you mamish switched. You said a totally different type of pan. But over here we could have thought maybe since the fact is you didn't change the pan. You're in the same pan. You just question was if it's one pan or two pans. You switch that. Shouldn't be such a big deal. That should still be kosher. So that's why it has to tell me. I could have thought you made Yidei Nidri Namiyatze. I could have thought that you were Yaitze. So it says, no, you weren't Yaitze Yidei Nidri. And then if you said Arizu, then you weren't Yaitze Bechlal. V'yashmin and Hach, Shem Deka Poliglu. If we would only say the one that where you had one Keli and you brought it in two Keli. Aval Hasam Delay Polig, but over there where you brought it in the same, and it was one Keli and you brought it in one Keli. Okay, you changed the Keli, but it's still the same amount. So a Malaya could have thought maybe you're over there, you should also be Yaitza. So Tzricha comes to tell me that each one of these is significant enough that you won't be Yaitza the Neder.
Depending on the vessel, it was like the consistency, because one had more oil, one had less oil. So if like everything was perfect except the vessel, it would disqualify.
How do you know one had more oil? We had a machlokes about that.
We reviewed, some had no oil, some had a little bit. I thought that was.
So we had a machlokes if you added the flour, if you increased the oil. I thought one opinion was that the ratio stayed the same. There was one opinion that no, you just kept the one lug, or one revius, however much it was, per isarin. Yeah.
It was a lot. And the order first and how very detailed.
Okay. Tanarabanan. We learned that what you brought is good, but you didn't fulfill the pledge. Now we introduced in the Brisa, we introduced the opinion of Reb Shimon. Reb Shimon, he says no. Just like we thought in the Havamina, that that there were options that maybe you would still fulfill the pledge, because how much did you change already? You didn't change so much. He says, the fact that you said that you're going to bring in this keli and you brought in that keli, that doesn't matter. So it's all considered one mincha. He says you're still yaitza. It's for Reb Shimon. Okay. He holds that it doesn't make a big difference the type of keli or the amount of kelim. Doesn't matter. Zulahavi b'machavas, when it says that he's going to bring this one in a flat pan, said that it's going to be possible if you didn't do that. But Tanya, like kitchen keli, like kitchen klishars, we have a brisa that says if you didn't do it the way that you said, it doesn't become kodesh. So if it doesn't become kodesh, why do you say that it's possible? Just take it out and do it again. Amar Abaya lekitchem likarva lekitchem lipasel. It didn't consecrate it enough to be brought, because as we're saying that it's possible, but it's still consecrated enough that it becomes possible. Amar Abaya. Abaya also says leishanu ela shekavan b'shas neder on top of 103. When do we say that we make such a big deal about the way you pledge? That's only if that pledge took place at the time of when you took the original pledge. You said Harei Alai, Aval or Harizu. Aval b'shas afrasha, but if it's at the time of just bringing it, as you pledge that you're going to bring a mincha, and then as you're bringing it, you said, I'm going to bring it in this pan. That's nothing. Because kasher nadat v'le fresh, it has to be at the time of the original oath, not at the time of the separation. Over there, that's you're just saying what you're going to do. I'm going to go in the car. I'm going to bring it over here. It's only at how it originally becomes an obligation, where over there it makes the difference. Itmar nami amar Rav Acha bar Chanina, amar Rav Asi, amar Rav Yechanan. Leishano shekam b'shas neder. We also stated the name of Rav Yechanan. Besides for Abaya, it goes back earlier than that. It goes to Rabbi Yechanan's times, where it says that this was only taught if the pledge was taken at the time of the vow, al b'shas afrasha alai, but if it was taken at the time of separation, which means at the time of bringing it, then that won't make a difference, because it says kasher nedar tevlei kasher frashta. We quote the verse that says as you vowed. It doesn't say as you separated. Yeah. Okay. We have a new Mishnah. Someone takes a pledge, says, I'm going to bring a mincha from barley. Now, there are menachos that come from barley, but they're very rare and a very specific situation. The aimer or the saita. So, but you can't pledge that. You can't do that as a pledge. So it doesn't make sense. So it says yavi menachitim. You still have an obligation to bring a mincha, but you bring it correctly. You bring it from wheat. Kamach yavi seilas. Let's say he takes a pledge that he brings from the coarse flour, the mincha. Now there's no mincha from the coarse flour except by the saita also, but so it doesn't make sense. So he says you bring from seilas. You bring with refined flour. B'lei shemen. He says I'm going to bring a mincha without oil. Now that doesn't exist except by the mincha scheite. B'lei levaina. Or without frankincense, it's the same situation. So yavi shemen levaina, that was like just a mistake. You have to bring shemen and levaina along. Chatzi yisarin. He says I'm only going to bring half the amount. So that doesn't exist either. There's always the smallest amount was always a yisarin. It says yavi yisarin shalom. You have to bring it correctly. So you got stuck into this. You got to do it correctly now. Once you said you're going to bring a mincha, even if the details that you said were not didn't match with this, we correct it for you. Isara inu mechza. Let's say he says isarin and a half. What does he bring then? Yavishnayim. You have to bring 2 isarin because we don't have half measurements by the mincha, except by the chavite kain gadol. But besides for that, I wouldn't mix in the potential part. There's other things to mix in, but not the potential. Reb Shimon, Shimon says no. The whole thing is inaccurate. So if you didn't take a real pledge, it's not a mincha. So you said nothing, right? There's nothing there. There's no pledge. The whole thing was a mistake. Gemara says, now, Reb Shimon seems to be correct. It says, Amai, why do you say at the beginning, why does the Tanna Kama hold that he has to bring a mincha and he has to bring it from the wheat? It says, Neder Pischa Yimayu. He has a clear way out. He has a Pesach. He says, I wanted to bring barley. Now you're telling me I have to bring wheat. I never, if you would tell me that I would have to bring wheat, I never would have made the pledge. You have a mamash way out of the neder. Chizkiah says, Hamani Beishamai. This is the opinion of Beishamai. Damar Tafas Lashon Rishon. That we always grab the first thing that you said. We say it like this. He says, I'm taking on myself to bring a mincha from barley. So we say, did I hear the word mincha? Okay, you have to bring a mincha. He said, no, I said from barley. So don't mix me up. You said mincha, you're bringing a mincha. Tafas Lashon Rishon. You said that, finished. Tanan, as we learned in the Mishnah. Someone says, I'm going to be a nazir from figs and from dates. There's no such thing as a nazir from figs and dates. It's from grapes. So Beishamai Yamrim Nazir, Beishamai Nazir. Beishamai says he's a nazir. So it says, no, he's not. It's totally not. He's not a nazir. See, what he said was totally a mistake. Okay, so that was our pshat, our first pshat in the Mishnah. Why does he have to bring a mincha from wheat? Because he said he's bringing a mincha. In Tafas Lashon Rishon, we follow the opinion of Beishamai. Rabbi Yochanan says, you can actually say that even in our Mishnah we can follow the opinion of Beisilo. However, what we'd say is that this specific scenario was where the person didn't say, "Oh, if I would have known that I would have to bring from meat, I never would have taken the vow." He didn't say that. He said exactly the opposite. He said, "Oh, if I would have known that you can't bring from barley, then I would have said that I would bring from wheat." So when he tells us that, then he loses his exit of that obligation. Doesn't tell me if he stays quiet. It's a specific case, Ba'imer, when Yitzhak says that this is what I would have said. Amar Chizkiah. Chizkiah says, Leishanu ala da'amar, the only way that this would work was if the person says, Mincha min hasairim. Says that I wanted to bring a mincha from barley. Abalamar mincha min adashim, but if he would have said that I want to bring a mincha from beans, then then we would say that there's no obligation at all. That would be a full exemption. Just get right out of it. Michti. Gemara says, 1 second. Who would Chizkiah be following? Beishamai? You want to say he's following Beishamai? Beishamai, Mishum Tavas Lasim Rishnu, Mali Min Aser, Mali Min Adashim. Why should I make a distinction if he said, I'm bringing a mincha from barley, if you said I'm going to bring a mincha from lentils or something? I don't know how to translate lentils. So what's the difference? The fact is, once he says the word mincha, we catch him on that. Tafas Lashon Rishon. We grab that statement. Say, oh, you said mincha? I don't care. Don't mix me up with what you said afterwards. You said mincha, you have to bring a mincha. So how would it follow? Anyway, who would it go along with? So it says Hadarvei. Okay, Chizkiah retracted. My time Hadarvei. Why did Chizkiah retract? Amarava, Masnisim Kashisa, he had a problem with the Mishnah. My area, the Tani Mincha Minasairim, listening Minadashim. Why specifically did the Mishnah say that, let's say it would be, let's say it would be both. Yeah, both of them. It doesn't, let's say it didn't matter. See if you have to read this whole thing. Let me see. Let it say to add in. There's two ways of looking at this. Say that when he says mincha min asairim, wants to bring a mincha from barley. So that's a classic mistake where a person could think that maybe he's bringing a mincha from barley. So could have thought that it's a classic mistake. However, if he would have said mincha min adashim, which there's no such, you can't even make that mistake. So then that would be definitely Taifas Lashon Rishon. If it would have said mincha min adashim, then it would have been even clearer that Taifas Lashon Rishon, that it doesn't matter. Ella Shema Mina, the fact that it didn't say that, Mishum Detayu. The reason why he has to bring a mincha is because he thought that that's taka what you bring. You bring a mincha from Sairim. And it turns out that he can't bring from Sairim. So then he brings from Chitim. So Mishnah has a din, if you made that mistake that you're going to bring barley, that was a mistake. Ela Shema Mina Mishum Detayu, because he made an innocent mistake. B'Sairim Tai. Made a mistake that he thought that he could bring a mincha from barley, but really he wanted to bring a mincha. However, ba'adashim laitoi, but no one would ever make that mistake by a mincha. And if he says mincha min adashim, so it must be that he's retracting and he doesn't want to bring any mincha at all. So Chizkiah said mincha min asairim. If he says mincha min adashim, then he's not chayiv to bring anything because it was chayzer. So he said, who does he follow? The Hadar Bey, when the Mishnah, this is the pshat. This I didn't get this before. The original answer of who's the author of our Mishnah, when we asked, when we answered that the author of our Mishnah is Beis Shammai, that was Chizkiah that was saying that. So then the Gemara says, but 1 second, who is the Chizkiah Kamanam L'Shmaite? Who would Chizkiah be saying his halacha like according to Beis Shammai? Because he's the one that claims that the Mishnah is following Beis Shammai. So then the Gemara says, no, Chizkiah retracted from saying that the Mishnah is Beis Shammai. He says the Mishnah is like according to Rabbi Yochanan, where Rabbi Yochanan said, not that it's Beis Shammai, he said even if it's Beis Hillel, but we have a special scenario where the person says, Ilu yisi neider, Ilu yisi yedeya, that you don't make that neder. I would have said it differently. So now the reason why he has to bring the mincha is because he actually said that that's what I would have done. So if that's the case, then you would only do that by barley. But if he says by lentils, then we would say that he's actually retracting. Even though Chizkiah is now following Rabbi Yochanan, but nevertheless comes along the next Gemara. But Rabbi Yochanan would argue on Chizkiah. Chizkiah is following Rabbi Yochanan's pshat in the Mishnah. But the way Chizkiah then says, Leishano, Rabbi Yochanan disagrees with. Rabbi Yochanan Amar Afilu Min Adashim, the same thing would apply. That if the person says, I'm accepting on myself a mincha from lentils, he would actually have to bring a mincha, not like Chizkiah. Michti. 1 second. Rabbi Yochanan, come on, Shmaiti. Who does Rabbi Yochanan follow? Beis Hillel has nothing to do with Tafas Lashon Rishon. So why would it? Beis Hillel Mishum Detayu? Beis Hillel, the whole reason was because he makes a mistake. He really wanted to bring a mincha, and he just didn't know the details. But over here, if he's saying Min Adashim Mishum Detayu, B'Sa'irim Tayu, we could only make that mistake about barley, B'Adashim Leitayu. No one would ever make that mistake about lentils. So it must be that he's retracting. So the Dvarav the Chizkiah Kamalei. Telling what's happening here is that Rabbi Yochanan is arguing on Chizkiah, saying Chizkiah was a son of Reb Chia, a little earlier. He says, at my time Mahadras Bay, what's the reason why you said that you can't learn the Mishnah like Beis Shammai, Mishum Delay Ketani Min Adashim? Because if it would be like Beis Shammai, where it doesn't matter what you say later, because always Tefes Rishon, then it could have said even if mincha from lentils. But he says, Dilma Laimi Bai Kamar. Maybe what the Mishnah means to say is not only, it goes like this. Laimi Bai Min Adashim, not only from lentils. Dikla Meimar Mahadar, the Hadabay could have said that maybe he's retracting, but we don't, with Tefes Lashon Rishon, but nevertheless, we say Tefes Lashon Rishon that you take the first expression, which was he said he's going to bring a mincha, but even if he says that I'm bringing a mincha from barley, we could have thought that he's actually making an innocent mistake, and he didn't mean that he wants to bring that he was retracting. You see, when do I say Tefes Lashon Rishon? You said that you were going to bring a mincha from lentils. So too late. You said a mincha. You try to retract later when you said from lentils. You try to make the whole thing into a joke, but it's too late. You already said a mincha. But if you say I'm accepting on myself a mincha from barley, over there you're not making the whole thing into a joke. You actually meant a mincha from barley. So I could have thought over there maybe you're not chayiv b'chlal. Or even over there where it's an innocent mistake, we still say that Tefes Lashon Rishon. That's what Rabbi Yochanan is saying. That for sure, if it's from Bar, for sure, according to Chizkiah, Chizkiah didn't need to retract and agree with Rabbi Yochanan's pshat. Chizkiah could have kept his own pshat and kept say like Beis Hillel and still said the same halacha. Even so, no. What he's saying is that Chizkiah would have, even if you would say according to Beis Hillel, what happened is Chizkiah said his din according to Beis Shammai, right? He said that the Mishnah is following Beis Shammai. Then he says it has another din, that it's only by if he says mincha from barley, but not mincha from lentils. He said, but it doesn't fit with what he said about Beis Shammai. So he said, okay, fine. It's going to go like Beis Hillel, then it's going to work. So Rabbi Yochanan says, even if you go like Beis Hillel, it doesn't work.
Just for example purpose. But I don't understand why they would just dismiss his intention. He wanted to bring something. And I don't think that they joke. Like, that somebody would say, "Oh, like I'm gonna bring them in," and they say something that's out of the to cancel it out.
Yeah, when he says something that's ridiculous at the end, it means that, but he didn't mean it.
I don't think he would be joking. Like I've never even seen that done like today. I'm guessing that people back then were higher than I was thinking people joking.
If someone says, is there a difference between if someone says, I bet you that this is not the case. Or if he says, I bet you $1 million that this is not. When you say $1 million, you turn the whole thing that's like ridiculous. No, that's because the reason why you're saying that is because you're not in this where Beis Hamikdash is an everyday thing. Once the Beis Hamikdash and Menachos is an everyday thing, then people do it differently, right?
No.
I have a part that why does the king have to have two Sifrei Torah? One he keeps in his in a vault, right? He keeps another one he keeps with him. So Moshe, listen to this. So they said that the there was a sefer came to visit a school, and they wrote everyone's name on a parchment. Anyway, one of the girls, it fell on the floor. It was just by a desk on the floor. Everyone else kept it, and they put it like in their, taped it to their thing, to their sefer or something. They just let it fall on the floor. They said, "What are you doing?" It's like your name written on the floor. So she said, "Listen, my father's a sefer. I have this parchment and ink. It's all over my house. It's not. All the kids, they never saw this, so they're excited about it. For me, anyway, that's the pshat why the king has to keep the Sefer Torah in the vault, because when he has a Sefer Torah with him always, maybe he could come to mistreat it. So you always say no. You have to keep one Sefer Torah always in its pristine, special case. So then you don't come to mistreat it. I'm just saying that you can say, this is your first time bringing a mincha, so you say, how could someone make a joke out of it? Right? It's like the people that never go to shul, they get very upset when people talk in shul. When you're in shul every day, 3 times a day, how can you get angry at the guy that's talking? He's there 3 times a day. It's not like he comes on Yom Kippur. And it comes on Yom Kippur, so be quiet. It's 1 out of 365. You're there every day, 365 days a year. You tell them to be quiet. It's a limud schos. Okay. Amar Ziri. Amar Ziri. Leishano. Ziri says this was only taught that you have to bring a mincha, a proper mincha, even though you said that you were going to bring a mincha that doesn't exist. That's Leishano Ella Damar mincha. So if you said mincha, avalayamar mincha, but if you didn't use the word mincha, so Rashi over here says, if you said minchas sa'irim, so then it's already. Then we're not going to say that tafas lashon rishon. Why? Because you didn't say the word mincha. You said minchas. Minchas means the mincha of. So that meant that we can't just grab it because you're already connecting it to the next phrase. That's Rashi's first shot. Rashi's second shot is that if he doesn't use the word mincha, he just says harei alai sa'irim, then he's going to be pater because he meant sa'irim. There's no tafas lashon rishon there. Okay. Anyway, lo yamer mincha, then lo. Yosef Rav Nachman v'kama la lahashmaita. Rav Nachman was saying this over. Esvi Rav Nachman. This is very classic. Rav asks Rav Nachman a question. Does that all the time. Rav asks Rav Nachman. It says kemach yavi seilas lav d'le'am mincha. He didn't say over there that it says mincha. And it's nevertheless is going to be chayev. It says loy damer mincha. It says minchas kemach. Mincha. Maybe it says mincha shel kemach. It says b'lei shemen levayna. It says yavi shemen levayna. My love d'le'am mincha. It looks like he didn't say the word mincha. It says loy damer mincha. He said actually the word mincha. It says mincha without shemen levayna. Okay. Then Rava says, Chatzi son yavi yisar shalim. My love, d'le'am mincha. It doesn't say over there that he said the word mincha. And nevertheless, he's going to be chayev. It says, Lai damer mincha. We're talking about over there, he says the word mincha. Okay, so that was like a bunch of attempts, because the Mishnah wrote it more shorthand, saying maybe he didn't say the word mincha there, because it shortened the expressions that the person says. And Rav Nachman responds that he's always said mincha. If that's the case, so let's take a look at the sefer. It says, Yisar nemechzi avishnayim. It says if he's going to bring a mincha and a half, then he has to bring 2. Yisar and a half, he has to bring 2 menachas. So kivan de amar mincha, the chayev le the Yisar. I get it. He said a mincha, so he has to bring an Yisar. Ki amar chatzi Yisar, so lo amar klum kamar. He didn't mean anything. So what's the whole reason? If it's just a tafas lashon rishon, why does he have to bring 2? You only have to bring 1. It's mincha v'sarin. The chatzi is nothing. When it says leitzricha the amar, he actually said it in the opposite order. He said already mincha chatzi yisarin v'yisarin. says, I'm bringing mincha of a chatzi yisarin. Now over there we can say tafas lashon rishon. We grab the first expression. You say, oh, I heard you say mincha. Okay, you have to bring a mincha. You said chatzi yisarin. Okay, that's meaningless. And then you said an yisarin. So now you have to bring two. Even though mincha chayv lebi yisarin. Kiamar chatzi yisarin le'em klum kamar kiadar amir yisarin. Now you have to bring another one. So you have to bring, what's the two? Not because of the chatzi yisarin. You have to bring two. One because you used the word mincha, and one because you said isarin. Okay, but ihachi Reb Shimon Paiter. Reb Shimon says he's exempt. So it's not a misnadvim. Amai, why should he be exempt when he says chatzi isarin and isarin? For sure, he wants to bring at least one isarin. Wants to bring 1.5, but for sure he wants to bring one. That's ridiculous. Amar Rava says, Reb Shimon, Beshitas Reb Yosi Amra. Reb Shimon is following Reb Yosi Damar, Af Bigmar Devarava the matfis that we grab, but he says even at the end, we say it's all one expression. And since he says Achatzi Yisaren, so then we say that the whole thing doesn't work. Okay, interesting shita. Okay. The new Mishnah, this is actually a famous Mishnah, says, Misnadava the mincha shall shishim yisaran, or maybe b'kliyachad. Person, the largest mincha that he can pledge is 60 yisaran, and he brings it in one vessel. There's parentheses here that the Shita Mekbetzes takes it out. Im Amar, let's skip it. Im Amar Harei Alai Shishim Be'echad says, I'm accepting a mincha of 61 Yisaran. Maybe Shishim B'Kli Echad, Be'echad B'Kli Echad. So you do 60, very imbalanced. You do 60 in one vessel, and you have one in another vessel. Shekein Atziva maybe B'Yom Tov Rishon Shel Chag, Shechol Yisbesha B'Shishim Be'echad. Because there is a mincha of 61, which the community brings on the first day of Sukkot, if it falls on Shabbos, and v'daya liyachid shu pachas min hatzibar echad, and an individual has to be a little bit less than the community, so at least it's less one. That's good enough. Okay. Amar Reb Shimon. Reb Shimon says, "Halay elu leparim, elu lekvasim, beinan nevlalim." Says, what are you telling me about Sukkot? Rashi goes through the whole thing. It says that if you have 13 cows on the first day of Sukkot, so that's going to be 3 Yisar each. So that's going to be 13 times 3 is going to be 39, right? So then you have 14 sheep. And you have for each sheep you have 1 Yisar. So 39 plus 14 is going to be 53. And then you have 2 rams. For 2 rams, you have to have, each one has 4 Yisarin. So that was 53 plus 4 is 57. Then you have 2 Tamid. So that's going to be another 2. That's 59. And then you have 2 lambs, Musaf of Shabbos. So 59 plus 2 is going to be 61. So we said, okay, we see a community who has a mincha that has 61 Yisarin in it. So for the community, that's the community. The individual, it has to be a little less than that. So it's going to be only 60 in one vessel. Comes along Reb Shimon and says, why are you mixing all of those together? Those are totally different menachas. You have for the cows, for the bulls, you have the 39, this. You're mixing it all together and saying it's all one chalent. Ella, rather, what's the pshat? Ad shishim yechel nibala. If you have up to 60 in the pot, you can mix it. But But more than that, you can't mix it. It's going to start to spill over. You can't mix it in the pot. Amrulai, shishim nevlalim shish ve'achad ein nevlalim. So he says 61 makes a big difference. 61, add a little bit. He said Amar lehem. He says you're not getting it. Kol midas chacham ken. We always have a demarcation line in all our measurements. It says barbaim sa utayvel, barbaim sa chaser kutev, ein yachal litval. It says when you say a little bit missing, you're going to say it's doesn't matter. We made a shear. That's the shear. So we set the line, and that's the line. It says if it's more than that, it's no good. If it's less than that, it's no good. We can make a measurement, and that becomes the measurement. Right? That's the way the laws work. The Gemara says over here. Shoel sheila lamaila merabi Yehuda barabilai. We're right after the Mishnah on 103. It's an interesting expression, but what it means is that they asked a question in front of Rabbi Yehuda barabilai. Very appropriate. Lag Baimer. Rabbi Yehuda barabilai, the Gemara tells us that he was the Reisha Medabrim, he was the head speaker. Minayin la'Imer, how do we know that if someone says,
his yard side is Pesach Sheni. Oh, sorry.
Hey,
His yard side is Pesach Sheni.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I didn't know that. Wow. Uh-huh. So I guess all of the Talmidei Rabbi Akiva have a yard site somewhere in the Eimer. But Rabbi Yehuda barabilai wasn't one of those, so it just happened to fall out then.
Yeah, Rabbi
Right?
Meir also.
When's Rabbi Meir's yard site?
Same.
Also
Pesach
Pesach
Sheni.
Sheni?
Yeah.
Uh-huh. You have to find out Rabbi Yossi and Rabbi Lazar ben Shemua. You know where Rabbi Shimon is and Lag Baimer, so maybe they'll. I don't know. Okay, it doesn't have to do with the students of Rabbi Akiva passing away in the Eimer. No, but one would mess up the thing. So someone says, maybe shishim kliachad ve'achad b'kliachad. Okay, so what's the source for that? Pasuk Rabbi barabilai, Reisha Medabrim b'chol makim. He was the head speaker based on what the Romans instituted, because he spoke well about the Romans. And he said, because the community brings 61 Isaran for a mincha, and it's enough for an individual to be less than the community by at least by one. Amalei Reb Shimon, elu leparim ve'elim ve'elu lekvasim ve'elu b'li lasan ava ve'elu b'li lasan raka, elu b'li lasan shachris, elu b'li lasan bein arbayim. You don't mix all of those together. They're totally separate. It happens to be that you found a number and now you're matching it up, but that number is totally insignificant for what we're talking about. Amrulai Amarata, tell Reb Shimon. Okay, so you say a pshat. Any mincha that's mixed with oil or a mincha that's dry, you see that it needs to be mixed. And basically what he's saying is that up until 60 you can mix it. Rabbi Yehuda tells him you can only mix it in 60, not 61. It's always like that. When we set a rule, that's the rule. Set a line. That 40 saw for the mikveh is good. 40 saw missing a drop is not good. If the mikveh is missing a drop, it's not a mikveh. Or kebeya metamet masaychlin, kebeya chaser shumshum ein metamet masaychlin. It needs to be the size of an egg to transmit tumah. If it's the size of an egg missing one sesame seed, so then it won't transmit it because it's too small. Or let's say a beged that becomes tummy. Shleisha al shleisha metami medras. Needs to be 3 by 3 tvachim to be metama for a chair. Slight shal sheish chasini machas. Ain't a matam mensch. Okay. And if it's missing, then it's no good. Who cares if you can't mix it? But kosher. We said that you don't even need to mix it. If you don't mix it, it's still kosher. Okay. So Reb Zera, this is where we have this thing which Bill mentioned earlier. Anything that's fit, that has the potential to be mixed, then you don't actually have to do it. Anything that doesn't have the potential, then bila makeves by, then it makes a difference. And then it makes a difference. This is like the grammar rules in English grammar. Once you know the rule, then you don't have to keep it.
Listen,
You
one in
don't know the rule, you're in trouble.
1 in 60 is a rule, 1 in 61 is right?
Yeah, it's not 1 in 60. It's a mincha of 60. So you can mix with the oil. But if it's 61, then you can't mix it.
But that seems to go against like the batel shishim, the other coin where 1 in 60 is batel, and we never say 1 in 61 is not batel.
No, because it doesn't have to do with batal. It has to do with either it has to do with the size that you can't mix the oil, or maybe it's talking about that there was only a small amount of oil. You wouldn't able to mix it with so much flour. Yeah. Some of Nishakaya.
Because GPT doesn't know.
We have shots from that Chat GPT says that we don't know all the yard sites. Okay, have a good day, everyone. Okay.
Find them.
I think.